Betrayed, Carney's DST shift raises alarm. Are Canadians paying the price for corporate gain? When Mark Carney assumed office as Canada's Prime Minister following the snap federal election on April 28, 2025, a wave of cautious hope swept through many corners of the nation. His long-standing reputation as a skilled economist and former governor of the Bank of Canada suggested he might bring much-needed fiscal discipline and steady leadership during an era marked by economic uncertainty and political turbulence. For many Canadians, Carney's ascent symbolized a chance for renewal and responsible governance. However, barely months into his premiership, Carney's approach to the digital service tax, DST, has left many feeling betrayed, igniting fears that corporate interests might be overshadowing the needs of ordinary Canadians. What started as a bold, assertive policy to hold multinational tech giants accountable has seemingly unraveled into a retreat that threatens Canada's economic sovereignty and the promise of fairness. The digital service tax was more than just another revenue measure. It was designed as a powerful tool to compel global tech corporations to pay their fair share of taxes on profits earned within Canada's borders. Companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple have long faced criticism worldwide for exploiting loopholes that allow them to minimize their tax contributions in jurisdictions where they generate massive revenue. Canada's DST sought to close those loopholes and bring billions in new tax revenue to support critical public services, infrastructure, and government commitments. Yet, in a surprising and deeply disappointing turn, the government under Carney has backed off from enforcing this tax, sparking accusations of weakness and capitulation. This reversal has sparked intense backlash across the political spectrum and among the public. Many see Carney's retreat as a failure of leadership, a surrender to corporate pressure that disregards Canada's long-term fiscal health. Instead of defending the tax as a matter of principle and national interest, the government's decision appears to bow to the influence of powerful lobbying forces. Former Defense Minister Peter MacKay condemned the move harshly, labeling it a complete swallowing whole, and warning that the lost revenue would exacerbate Canada's deficit and compromise key programs, including defense spending commitments tied to Canada's role within NATO. The government's apparent inability to hold its ground has fed into broader worries about economic instability and a leadership style that seems reactive rather than proactive. These developments come at a time when Canadians are increasingly anxious about their economic future. Surveys show that while many remain proud of Canada's natural landscapes, cultural diversity, and healthcare system, there is a growing undercurrent of frustration. Inflation continues to squeeze household budgets, and public institutions, from healthcare to education, face mounting challenges. The failure to maintain a firm stance on the DST only deepens the sense of disillusionment, as it appears to contradict promises of fairness and accountability that helped fuel Carney's election victory. For many citizens, the DST debacle feels like a betrayal, another example of political elites prioritizing corporate interests over the well-being of everyday Canadians struggling to make ends meet. Compounding the controversy are questions about Carney's personal financial interests and his connections to Brookfield Asset Management, a multinational investment firm with extensive holdings in digital infrastructure. Brookfield has recently poured billions into data centers, cloud computing, and telecommunications assets across the globe, including investments in fiber networks and tech hubs in multiple countries. This relationship has raised troubling questions about potential conflicts of interest. Critics wonder if Carney's hesitance to push forward on the DST is influenced by his ties to Brookfield, given that the tax directly affects many of the very companies in which Brookfield is invested. Although no direct wrongdoing has been proven, the situation creates troubling optics and fuels public skepticism about whether government decisions are truly guided by national interest or private gain. The DST was meant to send a clear message that Canada was ready to assert its economic sovereignty and stand up to multinational corporations that have too often escaped fair taxation. Abandoning this tax risks not only billions in lost revenue but also diminishes Canada's standing on the global stage as a country willing to protect its economic rights. The retreat may encourage other jurisdictions to question Canada's resolve and could invite exploitation by entities eager to sidestep tax obligations. For the public, it signals a leadership that hesitates when firm action is needed most, undermining confidence in political institutions. Trade negotiations also hang in the balance amid these uncertainties. Carney has assured Canadians that he is working toward beneficial deals, yet with critical deadlines looming, the tangible results remain elusive. The specter of tariffs and trade disruptions threatens industries heavily reliant on export markets and casts a shadow over Canada's fragile economic recovery. Many Canadians are concerned that indecision and perceived weakness on trade matters will harm sectors that underpin the economy, from manufacturing to agriculture. The stakes are high, and citizens are watching closely for evidence that their government can effectively navigate these complex international waters. Meanwhile, the government faces daunting challenges on the defense front. Canada's NATO allies expect increased military spending, potentially reaching 5% of GDP, or roughly $150 billion annually. This ambitious target demands difficult budgetary decisions that could affect social programs, taxation, and infrastructure funding. Former Defense Minister Peter MacKay has repeatedly stressed that balancing these priorities will be complex and fraught with trade-offs. Without a clear fiscal plan or budget in place, uncertainty reigns, further eroding public confidence. The question remains: how will the government reconcile competing demands without sacrificing essential services or military readiness? This growing tension between political promises and the realities of governance has created a palpable disconnect between Canadians and their leaders. People want a government that not only speaks about fairness and prosperity, but delivers tangible results. The DST controversy has unfortunately reinforced the narrative that political expediency often takes precedence over principle and that corporate influence can overshadow the voice of ordinary citizens. This erosion of trust is particularly damaging during a time when unity and confidence are critical to facing the economic and social challenges ahead. Mark Carney's leadership is now at a defining moment. The choices he makes in the coming months will either reinforce or undermine his credibility. Will he rise to the occasion, defending Canadian interests against powerful corporate lobbies and delivering on the promises that brought him to power? Or will he continue to appear beholden to narrow interests, leaving Canadians feeling marginalized and voiceless? The answers will shape both his legacy and Canada's future trajectory.